They told me I wasn't wanted this Christmas, right in my own son's living room. I froze at the doorway, clutching the tray of my famous cookies and a bag full of presents. My heart was pounding, not with holiday joy, but with a gut-wrenching mix of shock and anger. I'd spent days planning every little detail for this Christmas. Wrapping, baking, even sneaking in a couple of new decorations. And now, apparently I didn't exist. The living room was quiet. Too quiet. My grandkids were there, yeah, but they weren't running to me like they always do. Instead, there she was, the stranger, a blonde woman with a red dress, smiling at my grandkids like she'd been in the family for years. And everyone? They were treating her like she was the center of this Christmas. I set my tray down on the table, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. My son, Mark, didn't even glance at me. He was chatting quietly with Jenna, his wife, and every so often, they exchanged these tiny, secretive looks that made my blood boil. "Mom, you're here," Jenna said, but her voice was off, like she was forcing it, like I was the problem for even showing up. I blinked. I wanted to say something. Hell, I wanted to scream, but I held it in. I had to understand what was happening before I lost it. Then I overheard her, the stranger, leaning toward my granddaughter, whispering, "Don't worry, I can take her place permanently." My stomach dropped. I gritted my teeth. Take my place? Permanently? I could feel my hands trembling, but I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me freak out. I set the gifts down carefully, my mind racing. Something was very wrong here. My own son, my family, they were planning to replace me. This woman wasn't just a guest. She was a threat. And yet, I stayed calm, hiding the fury boiling inside. Because if they thought I was going to let this slide, they were dead wrong. And then I heard the part that made my blood run cold. Exactly how far they were willing to go to erase me from my own family this Christmas. I took a slow step into the living room, pretending to adjust the cookies on the tray. But every eye in the room followed me, like I was some unwelcome guest at a dinner I paid for. My chest was tight, and my jaw ached from holding in words I wanted to spit out. Mark didn't even look at me. He was leaning close to Jenna, whispering something, smirking, like they were in on some secret I wasn't supposed to know. And that woman, Leela, I'd learned her name, was laughing at all the wrong moments, patting my grandkids on the head, telling them stories I didn't recognize. I wanted to yell, to storm out, to call every single one of them out, but I held it together. Because I needed to know the full picture first. I set the tray down on the coffee table, my hands shaking slightly. "So who's been telling my grandkids what to do this morning?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. Lila's smile didn't falter. "Oh, I was just helping them get ready for the holiday. You know, making things special," she said, her tone way too sweet, like syrup poured over poison. Special. My foot. I noticed the way Mark glanced at her when she said that, like she had some unspoken authority over the house now. The nerve. My house, my holiday. I moved closer to my granddaughter, crouching down to her level. "Hey, Pumpkin, want to help Grandma with the cookies?" I asked. She hesitated, glancing at Lila, then slowly shook her head. Mila leaned closer, whispering in her ear, and my granddaughter nodded. And just like that, she walked away from me, following Lila like she had no other choice. My heart sank. This wasn't just awkward. It was calculated. I realized then that this wasn't about Christmas cheer. This was about power. My family had lined up a plan to push me out, and Lila was their perfect pawn. The thought made my blood boil. I took a deep breath and squared my shoulders. They wanted a fight? Fine. They were about to see that underestimating me was the biggest mistake they'd ever made. And then I heard the part that made my blood run colder than ice. Lila's exact words about what they planned for me after Christmas. I stayed crouched by the coffee table, pretending to straighten the napkins, but my eyes never left Lila. She was smirking now, like she knew she had won before the game even started. My own son's grin, the one he always flashes when he thinks he's clever, made my stomach twist. I couldn't believe he'd let this happen. He, of all people. My own flesh and blood. Then I heard it, Leela's voice, just low enough so I had to strain to catch it, whispered to Jenna, "Don't worry. By the end of Christmas, she won't even be a problem." My blood ran cold. Not just a threat, a plan. They had mapped out exactly how to erase me from my family, from my home, from my own life. And I was standing there, watching it unfold like some bad Christmas movie. I gritted my teeth and sank into the far corner of the couch, letting my mind spin. I couldn't panic, not yet. They were all counting on me freaking out, storming out, or crying in some corner. But I wasn't going to give them that satisfaction. Not ever. I reached into my bag and quietly pulled out my phone, ready to record. Yeah, I'd play nice for now, but every smirk, every whispered secret, every sly glance, they were going on tape. And later, I'd make sure they remembered exactly who they were messing with. The kids, my grandkids, were still being charmed by Lila, giggling at her every little joke, ignoring the auntie who'd baked cookies for them every single year. My heart broke a little, but I swallowed it down. That's when I noticed something, subtle but telling. Mark and Jenna weren't just helping Lila. They were actively making sure she had control. Seating arrangements, food portions, even the way gifts were being handed out. It was all deliberate. I leaned back, feigning calm, while my mind raced with plans. I knew I had to bide my time, wait for the right moment to strike. Because when I did, it wouldn't just be a confrontation, it would be a revelation. And I had proof. Oh, I had proof. But nothing could have prepared me for what I overheard next. Lila's shocking confession about what she and my family had planned for me that night. I could feel my chest tightening, like every heartbeat was a warning. Lila leaned closer to Jenna, whispering something I wasn't supposed to hear, or so they thought. But I was no fool. I inched closer, pretending to rearrange the silverware, and caught every word. She'll never know what hit her. By tomorrow, she won't even be in the picture, Lila said, her voice low and dripping with confidence. I froze. That's when it hit me. They weren't just trying to take over my spot at Christmas. They wanted everything. My home, my space, my legacy erased. And the scary part? They'd thought this whole plan was foolproof. I clenched my fists under the table, hiding my shaking hands. This wasn't just betrayal. It was downright disrespect. My own family plotting behind my back like I was some irrelevant guest in my own life. I needed to think fast. I couldn't confront them now. It would tip my hand too soon. But I also couldn't let them walk all over me. I slowly reached into my bag and pulled out the one thing I knew would keep me safe. Proof. The receipts, The legal papers for the house, the property deeds. Everything was in my bag. I had come prepared, just in case. The kids were still distracted, sitting at the table, helping Leela set up what I realize now was her version of Christmas. Gifts were being handed out strategically, my grandkids getting attention from her, not me. I felt my stomach twist, but I reminded myself, patience. They were going to see the truth soon enough. I took a deep breath and walked toward the dining table, holding my head high. Everyone froze, the tension in the room suddenly thick. I let my gaze sweep across them, Mark, Jenna, and Leela. The smug little grins, about to vanish. I set the presents down slowly, deliberately, like I was placing bombs at their feet. They glanced at me, confused. That's when I spoke, calm and measured. Care to explain why someone I don't even know is acting like the matriarch of my family this Christmas? A beat of silence. And then Leela's eyes flicked to Mark and Jenna, panicked just for a second before the masks went back on. I smiled. Oh, they had no idea. They thought they were safe. But I was ready. And just when I thought I had a grip on the situation, I heard Leela say something that made my blood freeze. And it changed everything about this Christmas night. I couldn't believe what I just heard. Leela's words still hung in the air like a storm cloud ready to burst. By tomorrow, she won't even be in the picture. My blood boiled. Who did she think she was talking to? Me? The woman who had raised this family, baked for them, celebrated every holiday, and kept this house running for decades? I leaned against the counter, letting them underestimate me, while I fought fast. I could feel my mind racing through every detail. Every interaction I'd had with Mark, Jenna, and this stranger. They thought this was clever, like they were masterminds plotting behind my back. But they didn't realize I was watching, listening, and ready to strike at the perfect moment. I poured myself a glass of water just to calm the shaking in my hands. My grandkids were still oblivious, laughing at something Leela said about making the perfect gingerbread house. I wanted to step in, grab them, and tell them who really cared about them. But I stayed put. Patience, Evelyn. Let them reveal themselves fully first. Then I noticed it. A small slip. Leela reached for a box of my decorations, but she paused and glanced at Mark. I could see it in their eyes. The hesitation. The tiny spark of guilt that they thought I wouldn't notice. I smirked to myself. That was my opening. I walked over, deliberately slow, like I was enjoying their discomfort. "Oh, I see someone's redecorating for me," I said, my voice calm, almost sweet. But inside, I was ready to explode. Funny, because I think these are my decorations, the ones I've spent years picking out. Mark froze. Jenna tensed, and Lila's smile faltered for the first time. That little flicker of doubt, that's all I needed to start turning this night around. I pulled out my bag, letting it drop with a soft thud on the table so they'd hear it. Inside were all the proofs, deeds, receipts, evidence of everything I owned in this house. And tonight, they'd see that their little Christmas scheme wasn't going to work. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice low but firm. You know, I don't know who thought this was a good idea, but I have a feeling tonight everyone's about to learn a very important lesson about underestimating me. Their faces turned pale, and the tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. But just when I thought I had their attention, I overheard Lila whisper something that made my heart stop, and I realized the night was far from over. I felt the air shift in the room, heavy with tension. Leela, thinking she was slick, leaned closer to Mark and whispered something. I didn't catch all of it at first, but a few words hit me like a punch to the gut. After tonight, gone for good. My hands tightened around the edge of the table. Gone for good? Did they really think they could erase me? Me, from my own family? I took a deep breath, letting the rage simmer under the surface, because if I lost my cool now, they'd have the upper hand. Patience. Always patience. I poured myself another cup of coffee, letting the smell ground me while I plotted my next move. The grandkids were still laughing, still charmed by Leela, but I could see the cracks forming in Mark and Jenna. That little hesitation, that almost imperceptible guilty glance, they were finally realizing I wasn't going to be pushed around. I decided it was time to make my presence undeniable. I walked slowly toward the center of the living room, setting my bag of proofs squarely on the coffee table. The sound of it hitting the wood made them all jump slightly. That's when I let my gaze sweep across the room. Funny, I said softly, letting the words linger. I thought this was Christmas at my home with my family. But somehow, I feel like I'm the guest here. Lila's smile flickered. Mark's jaw tightened. Jenna's hand twitched as she held back words I didn't want to hear. I let a pause hang in the air, just long enough to make them sweat. You know, I continued, leaning casually against the table, I've always believed Christmas was about family, love, and honesty. Funny how some people seem to forget that. I watched their faces, reading the panic creeping in. The stranger thought she had control, but I could see her confidence shaking, just a little. That was all I needed. And then, the bombshell came. Lila whispered something to Jenna, loud enough for me to catch a fragment. Tomorrow, everything will be ours. No one will stop us. My blood ran cold. So they had a full plan. But here's the thing. They hadn't accounted for me. I knew then that tonight wouldn't just be a Christmas dinner. It was going to be a showdown, and the next move was mine. I sat down slowly, letting my presence fill the room. Every eye flicked toward me, but nobody said a word. I could feel the tension radiating off Lila like heat from a stove. She knew her smooth little act was cracking. I leaned back, letting a sly smile play across my face. You know, I've always loved Christmas, I said, my voice calm but carrying a sharp edge. The lights, the laughter, the traditions. But some people seem to think Christmas is about taking over someone else's family instead of celebrating it. Mark's eyes narrowed, and I swear I saw a flicker of guilt pass through his face. Jenna, of course, tried to keep her cool, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. But Lila? Oh, Lila's confidence was shaking like a leaf in a storm. I pulled my bag closer, letting it brush against my leg just so they'd hear it. Funny thing, I continued. I came prepared. You see, I know a thing or two about this house, this land, about my family. Their faces stiffened. You could practically hear the wheels turning in their heads, trying to figure out what I knew, what I was about to do. I leaned forward, letting my tone soften just enough to be dangerous. You've been planning to push me out, haven't you? Replace me with someone you think is better? Smarter? Younger? I let out a soft laugh, shaking my head. Honey, you picked the wrong grandma to mess with. The grandkids looked confused, sensing the tension but not understanding why. And that's exactly how I wanted it. They'd see the drama unfold without realizing how much I had already won. Then, just when I thought I had their attention, Lila made the mistake of whispering too loudly. After tonight, she won't know what hit her. I froze for a second, letting the words sink in. That was my cue. I didn't have to raise my voice, yell, or make a scene. My next move would do the talking. I straightened my shoulders and glanced at Mark and Jenna. "Oh, you're about to learn a Christmas lesson you'll never forget," I said, voice low, icy, and deliberate. But before I could make my move, I discovered something even worse, something that made me realize Leela wasn't working alone, and that my family's betrayal ran deeper than I ever imagined. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. As I scanned the room, trying to stay calm, I realized something terrifying. Mark and Jenna weren't just letting Leela take over. They were actively helping her. Every move she made, every glance, every tiny nod, they were backing her up like a little evil tag team. My stomach churned. My own family, my own son and daughter-in-law, working together to erase me from my home. I wanted to scream, to throw the cookies across the room. But I forced myself to stay still. No, patience. Let them dig their own grave. I reached for my bag under the table and felt the papers, the legal documents, the proof that this house and everything in it belonged to me. My grip tightened. This Christmas wasn't going to be the one they remembered. It was going to be the one I remembered, the one where they learned not to mess with me. Then, just when I thought I had the upper hand, I overheard Jenna whisper to Leela, "Once she leaves, everything's yours, permanently." My heart skipped a beat. Permanently? They were planning to kick me out, to hand over everything. My home, my inheritance, my family's Christmas, to a stranger. And they thought I didn't know. I slowly stood up, letting my presence dominate the room. "Oh, I heard that," I said softly, letting my words hang in the air like a loaded gun. The room went silent. Leela's smile faltered, and even Mark's confident little smirk wavered. I walked closer to the dining table, setting my bag of proofs on it with a soft thud. The sound echoed through the tense silence, and I could see them sweating just a little. "You thought you could replace me," I said, my voice calm but deadly. "You thought I wouldn't notice? But guess what? I did. And I've got everything right here to prove it." I leaned forward, letting my eyes sweep across them. Christmas isn't about taking over someone else's family. It's about love, respect, and knowing when you've crossed the line. They didn't say a word. They couldn't, because they knew the line had been crossed, and now I was about to show them just how far. But just when I thought I had cornered them, Lila made one last move. A move so bold, it almost made me hesitate. Almost. I felt the tension crackle in the room like static electricity. Lila, thinking she still had control, leaned forward with that fake, confident smile. But this time, I wasn't going to let her get away with even an inch. I cleared my throat, letting the sound fill the silence. "You know," I said, keeping my voice soft but sharp, "you've been running around like you own this place, like my family's Christmas is yours to control." I let that sink in. Their eyes darted nervously, but I stayed calm. That's when I reached for my bag, letting it slide slightly so they could see the legal papers and proof of ownership peeking out. Leela's smile faltered for the first time. Mark's jaw clenched. Jenna's eyes widened, but still none of them said a word. I could almost hear their thoughts. How did she find out? I leaned closer, speaking directly, letting my voice cut through the tension. This house, this land, these traditions, all mine. And no amount of whispering, sneaky glances, or fake smiles is going to change that. My grandkids were still seated, confused, sensing the tension but not fully understanding. And I didn't correct them just yet. I wanted the impact to hit fully before anyone tried to interrupt. Then I remembered Leela's last move, the one that almost made me pause. She had subtly tried to grab my granddaughter's hand, trying to pull her away to sit closer. That's when I decided it was time to stop pretending. I slowly reached out and took my granddaughter's hand, holding it gently but firmly. Come on, sweetie, Grandma's got a few things to explain. Their faces went pale. Leela's eyes widened, and I saw the panic spike in Mark and Jenna. They hadn't expected me to confront it head-on, not with evidence, not with confidence. I smiled, letting it be soft, but deadly. You thought you could replace me this Christmas, I said. But guess what? You're about to learn exactly why Grandma's still the one running this show. The room was silent, their nerves raw, and I knew the next few moments were going to leave them speechless, because this wasn't just about proving I owned the house. It was about showing them the truth about betrayal, lies, and how far I'd let them go before fighting back. And then, in the final shocking twist, I revealed a truth that none of them saw coming, and it changed everything about this Christmas forever. I took a deep breath and let the silence hang in the room for just a moment longer. Every eye was on me now. Mark, Jenna, Leela. Even my grandkids looked up with a mix of confusion and curiosity. This was it, the moment everything changed. I opened my bag and pulled out the documents, laying them carefully on the table so everyone could see. The property deeds, the receipts. The proof that this home, this land, and everything in it belonged to me. It was all there. No more secrets, no more whispers. See this? I said, my voice steady but firm. This is my home. Not because I'm stubborn, not because I want to control, but because this is where my family lives, and it always will be. Mark swallowed hard. Jenna's face turned pale, and Lila finally looked like someone had pulled the rug out from under her. But I didn't yell. I didn't scream. I just stood there, letting them feel the weight of the truth. Then I turned to my grandkids, my heart aching and swelling at the same time. You see, Christmas isn't about gifts, or who sits where, or who gets the spotlight. It's about love, about family. And no one can take that away from us. My granddaughter's eyes welled up, and my grandson reached for my hand. That's when I realized the fight wasn't just about me proving I was right. It was about reminding them all what really mattered. I looked at Mark and Jenna one last time, my voice softening. You thought replacing me would make things better, but the truth? Nothing can replace family, and nothing can replace love. Lila's smirk was gone, replaced with a kind of stunned silence. My son's shoulders slumped, the guilt written all over his face. And in that moment, I knew they'd learned something more important than ownership or control. I knelt down, hugging my grandkids close. The warmth of their tiny arms around me, the sparkle in their eyes, the quiet laughter beginning to bubble. It reminded me why I'd fought, why I'd stayed, why I'd never back down. And as I held them tight, I whispered, "No one can ever take our love from us. Not tonight, not ever." Because at the end of the day, Christmas isn't about who sits where or who thinks they belong. It's about being together, heart to heart, and remembering that family isn't something you can replace. And in that hug, surrounded by my family, I knew even the darkest betrayal couldn't steal the love that truly made this house a home.